We created this Project Visibility documentary to showcase the lives of local rainbow elders, LGBTQ plus older adults who are living and experiencing life. And so what a great honor it was to be able to sit across from these 11 folks and have them share intimate details of their life. Felt so privileged to be able to take those stories and put them into a way of sharing with the rest of the world about the significance of LGBTQ plus older adults so that we can understand a little bit more about a group that we may not know much about. And so that then we can provide the services that will help create, an environment where people feel included, where people belong.
I was back in Massachusetts at a place called the Forest Refuge. And I was doing a self-guided silent retreat thing for a month. And 2 weeks into it, I had this kind of epiphany experience where I was up early before sunrise one morning meditating in my room, and this kind of wave of self-compassion came over me. And the wave was like, you know what, honey, it's all right. You can be yourself. And you really have no choice. You can be yourself and it's okay. And this is what you have to do, and it's okay. It's okay, it's okay. I was 55 years old by then, so I'd spent 40 years or more too long.
So I was reading this information about gay men, and I remember thinking, that's me, and not quite knowing what to do with that information. So I basically came out to my instructor, who was very kind and very gentle, and helped me to kind of immediately come to terms with that. And then I was pretty euphoric, actually. I started practicing calling myself gay. Believe it or not, I had to practice that. It was like, how does that sound? Is that okay to call myself that? I was still exploring what it meant. And so that took a while.
When I came out, I had to, I guess, grieve. I didn't think of it as that because I was so excited about being a lesbian, but there was some giving up of things. Holding my partner's hand in public, being at all affectionate in public. I had to give up a lot of openness about who I was. And at the same time, I was creating my new lesbian life.
So I have 3 sons, and I came out to them when I was going to go full time. It was tough. It was really tough to come out to them. My youngest gave me a hug. I remember that. That was so nice. And the other 2, they're all accepting. They're all really accepting. The other 2, their mouths were kind of open. All 3 of them knew like trans people. So trans women or trans men or non-binary. But when you have somebody that close to you and it's your dad, I know it was hard. And so that is a tough thing on them. But they love me and accept me. We do all things. We go on vacation together. They're around me, type of thing. So that they've done a really good job. A little bit later, I came out to my mom and my sisters.
Mama had a seizure. She ended up in the hospital for 3 weeks. I moved into the house and I took care of Dad. And what the family realized is that Mama raised a daughter. I kept house just like my mother kept house. That's how she raised me. So that's when I really believe that's when she started to realize who I truly was. And Dad was the first person to call me Hita, his daughter. And it was one of those times where there was a lot of family around. And when I walked into the house, I said, Daddy, how are you doing? He says, Ay, Hita, I'm not doing well. I said, Dad, how come you did that? It's the first time I've seen you happy. Life is too short. Be happy.
I was with Ken for almost 40 years. He passed away 3 years ago. Mom passed away in the late 80s, so it was fairly shortly after we came out. And we go back to this small town, and at the funeral home, they had laid Mom out in the casket. It was a service, it was filled with family, friends, neighbors, and Dad came up, and there was me, my brother, Aunt Irene, and Dad. And so there were 4 chairs up there, and he says, well, there aren't enough chairs. We need a chair for Ken, and we need a chair for Pat, Pat being Craig's husband. And so he insisted that they sit up with family, and Ken found that very, very affirming, very, very wonderful. I mean, there is always the realization that you're gay, and it's always part of the conversation.
As a Black gay man, growing up in society, I've just always felt that I want to be respected, and I want to be treated equally. And in a lot of situations, that's not the case. You're dealing with racism, you're dealing with bigotry. You're still growing up in an environment, where gay culture is avant-garde, where there are a lot of, privileged white gay men, that are treating you the same as what you're accustomed to, in a bigoted world. If you've ever been called the N-word, if you've ever been called a black fag by someone who's gay and white and privileged, to me it has the same connotations and feels the same way as the N-word.
I've been on a bipolar journey for, 15 years. In a way, it's been easier to come out as queer than as having bipolar. By the way, I don't say I am bipolar, because it's not what I am, It's all this stuff I'm talking about.
Ageism is something I haven't quite wrapped my head around. Although I notice every now and then somebody will say, well, do you still work? And I'm like, what? One of my closest friends is 98 years old. And one thing I love is she makes me feel so young. Gertrude Stein said, you're always the same age inside. I just don't climb trees anymore.
I grew up definitely being in the minority, being a Jewish girl. Not that we were religious, we weren't at all, but just being different from other kids. One of my biggest memories was walking home from first grade with a lot of kids chasing me and yelling at me, why did you kill Jesus? I know I went through a period of time when I, didn't want anyone to know I was Jewish. I feel like I went through something similar with lesbianism. You know, when I was so scared of losing my daughter in a custody battle, I, you know, was very much in the closet.
I got really involved with political stuff. We went to the 1979 March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights. It was very, very important. It was only 10 years after Stonewall. That's why it was 79, not 80. It's a liberation from oppressive systems. We talked about sexism and homophobia and racism. I mean, those were all issues when, you know, mostly drag queens and trans people and gay men at the Stonewall bar. They say riot. They talk about it being the Stonewall riot. No, it was the uprising.
The biggest impact was the loss of so many friends. I'll never forget the first person who we were having dinner, and it was just talking this, talking that, talking the other, and then he started bursting into tears. Well, what is it? What is it? What is it? I have AIDS. And it was like, it was the early 80s. I mean, it was just at the very beginning. And so many thoughts of, oh my God, what do I do? What are the thoughts?
The city of San Francisco had a public health clinic system. And when I was very depressed, at one point, a friend of mine suggested that I go. Walked in the door and I had an intake nurse who was on the AIDS ward over in the San Francisco General Hospital. And she was volunteering on her night off to do intake at this clinic. And she listened to my story, asked me very probing questions. And she stopped me at one point. She said, now let me get this straight. You've been here in San Francisco for 4 years, and all that time you've been taking care of one person after another with AIDS, and several of them have died. Is that right? And you're still doing that? And I said, yes. And she just looked at me and she said, honey, no wonder you've got a problem. And that was just the right thing to say, because it also made me kind of think, oh yeah, I guess I am dealing with a lot here.
So this lapel is a depiction of Clela Rorex, who passed away in June of 2022, right before her 79th birthday. And Clela was the first person in the nation to issue a same-sex marriage license here in Boulder County in 1974. And Clela didn't know any gay people. She did it because it was the right thing to do. And she faced a lot of backlash, including having to move away from Colorado. The hate that was spewed at her during that time was too much. But she continued to be an amazing ally. She was not an armchair ally. She was part of our Speaking Out program until she said, Marty, I think I'm too old for this. The kids want to hear something different. She worked our front desk. She showed up at all our events. She was a supporter. Clela also left us in her will because that's how important the work was to Clela. I miss her, but her legacy is strong.
I am a LGBT and specifically transgender political activist. I greatly benefited from other people's political actions on my behalf and thousands of others. I have a mountain of privilege that I'm sitting on top of. And I am so grateful that I have it, that I try and use it to my advantage and to the advantage of the community that I'm from, to speak out from a safe place and lobby for their support for legal changes. I was seeing a whole lot of people come through the driver's license office and they were really getting the runaround, they were getting more information, they were being publicly embarrassed, and they were having unnecessary hoops that cost them time and money. And I worked for 8 years to get that changed. 5 of them lobbying the legislature with a bunch of remarkable LGBT people to change the laws for driver's licenses and birth certificates in our state. And those laws finally changed in 2019, and we added a few extra laws in 2020. to spread protections and inclusion of gender expression, gender identity, as separate from lesbians and gays and bisexuals, and include them in every state law in our state.
I remember actually, I had heard this word homosexual, and I thought, I don't know what that means, so I'm gonna go to the library and see if I can look up this word. So I went to the library and went to the vintage card catalog, and I flipped through all the H's and got to homosexual, and the card said, see front desk. I thought, right, I think I'll just go right up to the front desk and say, and so I left. And of course it was a negating and it was a shame message with it.
I knew what people thought I was. I knew how I felt. I didn't have any term for that. All I could do was try to explain people my own emotions and how I perceived the world and how I wanted the world to perceive me. There was a Time magazine cover for the transgender tipping point. Somewhere around 2010, people started to get to hear that term and start to understand it. But we're all individuals. We all have our own orientations and gender and spectrums. Notice I say Latinx. I identify as a Latina. Part of it is because I was born in a time where there wasn't anything except the binary. I spent the first 40 years of my life being intensively socialized into being male. So when I transitioned, I had no choice but to transition and become my mother. Younger people don't have to do that. I'm finding more and more in my practice that people in their teens and 20s aren't choosing a gender. I have a lot of gender non-binary individuals. They're rejecting the binary. Some may choose to be more transmasculine or transfeminine, but on any day they may have aspects of either gender or neither gender.
I have 2 wonderful grandchildren. My youngest was telling me just the other day, she has all these stuffed animals. She calls them my stuffies. And she was telling me, Nana, I have all these stuffies. Some of them are him, some of them are her, and some of them are non-binary. I was getting a pronoun usage lesson from my 8-year-old granddaughter. Yeah. They're just growing up so differently, so much more aware, so much more accepting. This is just how the world is in their world.
About 3 years ago, I had my knee operated on. I was in a Project Visibility panel. And they were asked kind of the same question, how was health care? And I said, well, I'll tell you, next week I'm having knee surgery, and I have to tell you, I'm apprehensive. I don't know who these people are, how they feel. I'm pretty vulnerable, lying on the table. And these people in the room all went, I work for that facility. I work for that facility. Don't you worry, we will make sure you are okay. I can't believe that you think you would be, because I think people don't get that, again, it's a vulnerable situation.
It seems so easy, but it's not. I remember years ago, doing a diversity training for the medical assistants who were on the front line, who were taking the intake forms from the patients, and we were trying to get them more comfortable, asking people what their sexual orientation is, who they're sleeping with. And you know what? They were more comfortable taking the financial information and discussing that with the patient than they were about the critical questions that would really give them the greatest insight about how to provide a greater level of care to these individuals.
The work I do specific to diversity, equity, and inclusion involves raising awareness and encouraging care and support in underserved communities and underrepresented communities. So I go to communities, I meet people where they are and talk about our programs and services. We're committed to achieving health equity, in particular in the LGBTQ community, by informing the community that we are a welcoming and affirming service provider. We ensure that our employees and our volunteers take project visibility training. That way, that helps to affirm the fact that we are an inclusive, welcoming organization.
There's no guarantee that older adults are going to get safe and affirming care. And so the more we have the trainings and the more we have an expectation that nursing homes, assisted livings, and home care agencies get trained and understand how to take care of older LGBTs, the better. So what we need to do, the next step probably is to work with older LGBTs and make sure that they have the platform they need to express their needs and concerns and have a strong advocacy arm in our agency that really will be there for them. Should someone come in to their home from a home care agency and not be sensitive, should they have to go to an assisted living or a nursing home, because these are the most vulnerable moments of someone's life, and it's very, very scary to trust someone to care for you on that personal level. It's important for us to be able to know what questions to ask and about someone's past, so they can do some processing about their past life and their past relationships, so they can be at peace, finally, at the end of their life. And that's the most important gift we can give to people.
Boulder County is aging at a higher rate than many other counties throughout our state. The farther we spread the information about project visibility, the better it is for folks who are in assisted living, folks who are aging. We know to this day there's discrimination. We all know the stories about somebody having to go into an assisted living facility and they go back in the closet. And they go back in the closet because we have a lifetime of discrimination that we've experienced, and even in doctors' offices. And so the more people who take the training, the more people who are aware of project visibility, the better life's going to be for those of us in the LGBTQ community who deserve the same thing everybody else deserves on our way out.
This work matters because it's important to be inclusive. It's important to include people because nobody should feel like they're on the outside. It sucks to feel like you're on the outside and you're not included. And so I think one of the best practices that we can learn in terms of inclusion is kindness. I feel like it just goes without saying that, you don't have to understand everything that's represented by diversity, but you can still be kind. And so I feel like that's the most important piece of inclusivity, is being kind. And then also, this work is really important for us to honor LGBTQ plus older adults that have come before us. Folks have gone through tough lives sometimes in the face of oppression and discrimination, and have paved the way for us to be able to live better lives. And so I think it's important for us to have that intergenerational connection to our ancestors.
This community just has really helped me grow as a person and get stronger, in that I want to help society kind of understand. I just started working for the city of Denver, and I'm probably one of the first trans people that a lot of my coworkers have ever met.
Well, I live up on the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. I'm up at 7,200 feet, so neighbors are there, they're sparse. There are a lot of gay trans people. I think a lot of us just prefer to not have to deal with other people.
I was very lucky. I grew up in London, and actually when I was in middle school, we had a gay society. So I think we were probably the first school anywhere that had that. And this was in the 1970s. So it's hard for me to judge because I grew up in a very accepting environment. So I didn't have to fight with people around me.
Newer generations have helped me incredibly. They have carried such a message to me. They are such an example to me. They had words from me on things that I didn't know anybody else knew about or what to do with them. And they just kept saying, it's okay exactly as you are. And I love those who came before and those who are leading me now. It's just amazing.
It's nice to see other people like me and to feel welcome in a place like this. Because usually when I first came out, I didn't feel accepted. I was kind of scared to come out and I didn't feel safe going out and other places. But here I feel safe. I feel comfortable.
One of the things that we talked about is we talk about inclusion. And I think there's always great to say, oh, we accept all. Oh, everybody's welcome here. And I always look at that, well, tell me how that plays out. Tell me what that looks like. And some people are, well, I said, no, I hear all the time, you're welcome. So it doesn't mean anything. And I don't want to be accepted. I want to be celebrated. And that's what I look for, is a place where people are going to celebrate who I am.